Awesome. Thank you all for joining us for the Understanding Advisor, Grad Coordinator, and Committee Roles and Responsibilities Workshop. Presenting for us today is Dr. Dave Schwartz from UNLV Ombuds. Hopefully I said that correctly. And I will now hand it over to Dr. Schwartz to get us started. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you so much. And also from the Ombuds office, Bree Starks is here as well. Hi, Bree. Great to see you. So I'm going to go through this really quickly. And yeah, while this is being recorded, I think we can turn it off for the Q&A afterwards. So if people have questions and don't want to ask while they're being recorded for YouTube, because, you know, who knows what's going to go viral on YouTube. Probably not this. But, you know, we can have that. So if people have questions, they can certainly save it for when the recording is off. So we'll roll through this. So today, talk through a couple of things really quickly, just the roles of advisors, coordinators, committee members, building a supportive academic team, and then clear communication and some conflict resolution principles. Okay, so there's a lot of positionality here in how this has. You may have professional students and grad students. You know, that may be one of the issues. And certainly if we have folks from either side, we would want to hear that. So the roles, the big roles here. Number one, your graduate coordinator is going to be a graduate faculty member who really is your contact point within the department, within the school, within the unit. That's their job. And they are in charge of running recruitment, retention, progression, and completion. So they do all that stuff. They also are the go-betweens between the unit and the grad college itself. How about the advisor? What do they do? Well, there's the pro tem advisor, who is usually assigned at admission when you get into grad school. And the student can then pick an advisor to be the chair of their graduate advisory committee. And one of the fun things about academia, however you say it, I always say academia. But one of the fun things about it is you have the same title for different functions. So when people talk about the chair, do you mean the chair of the department? Do you mean the chair of the dissertation committee, of the professional committee? What do you mean? So usually that's called the advisor. The advisor will be there for all the one-on-one mentoring, giving feedback on the dissertation thesis, whatever that project is. That's what the advisor's there for. You then have, you know, in this role, they have a couple of different responsibilities. And I think we can have a nice discussion about this afterwards. Perhaps some of these may be competing with each other. So for example, they do have to, on one hand, maintain high standards and help students through the program, overseeing a rigorous original research, but they're also going to be kind of mentoring in some ways. So in some ways they're evaluating, but they're also mentoring. And they also can provide help with professional development and things like that. So the job search, things like that. And if there's an IRB application, they are usually the principal investigator or PI. And also they prepare the students to defend, which sounds very much like UFC or something. So yes, they do that. They prepare them to defend. Okay. How about the committee members on that thesis dissertation committee or for doctoral projects? Well, basically they also help guide the student through the program. They're going to help with the project, and they also will administer that culminating experience, whatever that is, in your program for your field. And in most cases, it has the chair, the advisor / chair, 2 members of the department, and 1 grad college representative. 1 grad college representative. So 4 folks. Okay. Because yes, when people are voting, you always want to have an even number. Oh, that was a bit funny. Okay, so the grad college representative role, they're from outside your home department. And they are basically the graduate college representative on the committee. And they are, and I use the term mediate here, but they will mediate to ensure that the students are being treated fairly and equitably for the students and the grad faculty, to make sure that everybody's treating as they should be treated. And pretty much while they are not necessarily total experts in your discipline because they're outside the department, they are looking at things like fair and equitable treatment. They're also looking at the standards of conduct and research ethics. which any, you know, person with scholarly training would be able to speak to, as opposed to the strictly disciplinary issues. And they also will say, hey, this final document, whatever it is, if it's a thesis, a dissertation, a doctoral project, is original, rigorous, and is publication worthy. And we know that's important. Okay. So this is out of the grad college handbook. Any concerns witnessed by anyone on a graduate advisory committee should be reported to the graduate college dean or associate dean, and if necessarily, also simultaneously to the appropriate office on campus, compliance, IRB, student conduct or rights and responsibilities, risk management, disability resources. So if there's an issue, this is the structure that is set up. Okay, so I'd like to have a little discussion. We can do it in the chat. I don't know if it's feasible to turn off and turn on the recording. You're the expert in that, but I'd like to have a little bit of discussion and some input from folks about how do these overlap? Do any of them conflict? And that's pretty much what I'd like to talk about briefly.
Oh, yeah. I think you did mention some of the overlapping roles, including like maintaining like scholarly conduct, as well as guiding the student through the program.
Yeah, I mean, do other people see how this can lead to some tension sometimes?
I think it would lead to some tension because since they sort of overlap, um, some some members might feel like left out of the loop, or maybe their resources are like overused.
See that? Have a good question here. Is the advisor mentor part of the committee? Yes, they are. Can your faculty coordinator be your advisor, mentor, and the chair for the committee? I believe I will defer to the grad colleges for that, but I believe that answer is yes. Does that sound correct to people? You basically have the grad coordinator who is doing sort of the liaison between the grad college, but they're also still a scholar and they're also still mentoring students. And if your research interests and their research interests overlap, that would be the place to go. So they would be a natural fit. Especially in a lot of programs, you don't have so many. So yeah, excellent comment there about my advisor is also my dissertation chair. Yeah, so like you don't have. There's only so many people who have expertise in the field you're going for. So I don't know that we can afford to say, yeah, this really talented person who's really committed and wants to help, we're not going to allow them to be an advisor or a chair. So yeah, I think that's correct. What other questions do people have? What other questions do people have? Yeah, and I agree with this message from an iPhone here that the most major overlap is that they're simultaneously trying to maintain quality while also fostering the contributions, which is that balancing act. And I guess the difficult role that could put the students in is if I'm struggling with something, like obviously when things are going well, everybody's having cheesecake and cake pops and all that. It's everybody's having a party. Don't ask me why I settled on that. It's something you would have at a party. But when it's going well, everything's great. But when it's not going well, and let's say somebody's struggling, do you go to your advisor knowing that they are supposed to help you, but they also have to determine if you can stay in the program? That's a question. That's a question to ask. Okay, some other stuff. If the research is interdisciplinary and there's an external member, and there's always going to be that external grad college representative, how does this role play into the coaching, mentoring, and oversight? Okay, we've got some more. Okay, so good question, because they do have a really integral role. And a lot of times they may be the expert in one particular area. And I can't think of, obviously I don't have a specific dissertation topic. I can just like give that view and break everybody's role down. But I'm thinking, let's say you have something in a field, like somebody name me a field. Just give me a field. Something you would get a dissertation in. Do we have
Botany.
Geology. Okay, so let's say we have somebody in geology. And then and somebody is studying something with plants, and then they're outside. So their chair and the two people are in geology. Their outside person is in botany because it's like the geology of trees. I guess I don't. I guess that's a thing. Okay. Maybe I don't. And I'm sorry, and I do not claim to be a subject expert. My expertise is quite suspect in geology and botany. Although I've got some nice plants here, so maybe the botany not so bad. But anyway, probably what you would see is like if there's a section of the dissertation about trees, they would expect the botany person to have that certain level of subject expertise. But if it's about the geology, they wouldn't. And they would be able to mentor the student through the botany parts. And also they're there, while they're not a geologist, they know what a good dissertation looks like. They know what scholarly conduct looks like. And if something's not right, they can say, hey, I've got a concern here. Okay, and these are excellent. I'm rolling through this. So next one is, could there be a conflict of expectation? Yeah, I mean, that is a possibility. That if the advisor is part of the committee, they could expect more of the student. That's a total possibility. And that's why, and if anyone has ever been to my office, I have a little sign / poster on the wall that says, what are your unmet expectations? Because conflict is almost always driven by unmet expectations, where they may have an expectation that, like, yes, I expect more of you. You may not share that. That's an important conversation to have. Okay. And if you feel I'm not giving the full answer, please chime in again. Blah, blah. Okay, when we meet with committee members, do you have to meet with them as a group? Here's where we get into some interesting stuff. Yeah, you can meet with anybody individually. That sounds like a good idea to me. I would say, for the sake of working in the thesis or dissertation, making sure that their expectations are all aligned. And there's a couple of places where this can get tricky. If somebody is giving conflicting advice, so let's say they have their first draft of the thesis, and the chair says to get rid of the first chapter. Another member says keep the first chapter and make it even bigger, get rid of the second chapter. That's a good time to either have a joint email discussion or a meeting together just to say, hey, look, I want to manage your expectations here. What's your consensus? So yeah, that is an issue. So yeah, definitely you can meet with them individually. It's kind of a thing, and I'm going to get into more of the interpersonal relationship communication stuff. It may be tempting if a member is being difficult to vent to another committee member. That's not usually the best option there, because you don't know how well they know each other. They may be best buddies, and oh my God, you said something negative against my friend, and now I'm mad. So good idea to vent to somebody outside, like in the ombuds office. Last question here before we go back to recording and on with the presentation. Do we get to choose our committee members? The answer is usually yes. You do want to make sure that they can all get along. And kind of another caveat I have is sometimes people may pick committee members and say, well, these are 4 really smart people who are interested in my topic. What could go wrong? And then they see, well, actually, these 2 people don't get along, and they have a little proxy battle where they're both trying to exert influence over you, and they're kind of fighting through you. So usually it's a good idea to make sure that not only are they really good at what they do and do they get along with you, do they get along with each other? Because when you have a defense and all of a sudden 2 committee members are arguing, usually it's not, yeah. Usually it's not, when they argue, it never benefits the grad student. And too many times the grad student is caught in the middle there. So yeah, you want to make sure, like we said, they've got to make sure they're all on good terms. Again, back in the medieval era, when I was in grad school, like I got my chair, asked my chair, hey, who do you like working with? Okay, like that person could be good. Ask that person, who do you like working with? Okay, well, who else do you like working with? just made sure they all got along, and that made it a lot easier because I didn't worry about them fighting. Excellent advice here too. You can reconstitute your committee. You can reconstitute your committee, and it is your degree or your chair. You can do that. That is so exam track program, does all this still apply? I'll defer to the grad college on this one. So exam track, will they
I
have the advisor and all that?
I do not personally know.
Yeah, that we can get back to you. I mean, it is different because this specifically is for these things, but if there's a culminating experience and you do need to have a group of people, the same things would apply. Which in some programs it is, but I'm not familiar with every program, so I can't say yes in every program. But if there is going to be any kind of culminating experience where there will be a committee reviewing it, yes, this would apply. Yes, yes. But I don't, yeah. And again, what I would suggest for your program is specifically drill down into that and make sure this is actually really good advice for everybody. Information is your friend. Check everything with your program. Talk to your grad coordinator and get it all. Try to get it in writing. Try to get all those expectations of, okay, what am I going to be doing here? Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's resume recording.
You're good to continue.
Yeah, and give me the thumbs up when we're ready, and I will roll on.
Yeah. Sorry, I did. I did it
Oh,
like right
cool.
away.
Right. I was also looking at the chat, so I took my eyes away. So I'm like, oh no, I didn't. Maybe give the thumbs up, and I didn't look. I was staring at the chat. Okay, so building the team, building the supportive academic team, really important, really important. So number one is the team starts with you, and as was mentioned in the chat here, sounds really basic, but very important to know what you want, what outcome you want. Is it that you want to get a PhD? Is it that you want a master's? Is it you want the exam track program? What do you want? When you get the PhD, do you want to go into higher ed? Do you want to go into industry? Have a really good idea of what you want. Now, I'm not going to tell you that can't change because that, if the job I'm doing now compared to what I went for grad school, totally different. But at least you should have an idea of what you want just to have that goal. Also, number two, know your capabilities. What can you take on? What's too much? What are your strengths? What can you work on? Know that going in, because people in your program will make assumptions about you that may or may not be based in the reality. They may overestimate you. They may underestimate you. It's good for you to have an idea of what your capabilities are as you're doing this. Okay. Three, know your limitations, time limitations, workload limitations. Have a good idea of that. What can't you do? What's not realistic? Four, put together a plan. Nice to have that. Just to have something like, hey, here's what we're gonna do. This is how I'm gonna I'm gonna defend. I'm gonna go up, I'm gonna defend. Have that plan ready. Okay. Other roles, again, like the grad advisory chair, the advisor, the chair, whatever you want to call it, is in charge of the standards, the mentorship, the research oversight, the professional development and career advising. The members are going to give you feedback on your project and mentorship, the other people. The grad coordinator, who may or may not be in your committee and may or not be your chair, is basically the person who's submitting forms, documenting milestones, going back and forth between you and the grad college, or go between them and the department. And they are basically the point person for the department. So like, hey, I've got a question about geology and how many credits you need for this to declare, grad coordinator question for that particular program. How about your peers? Now your peers can be a really great support network because you're all going through the same thing. There's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of benefits. And if we can pause here for a second again, I just like having a lot of participation. Thank you. And I'll just say also grounding, as was mentioned before. So it's very important to have people outside the program or university. I'm kind of in the same boat with some folks where I didn't know a lot of the folks I knew outside of My program had nothing to do with higher ed because I was working in some very different areas. So while they could not give me advice on the dissertation process or assembling a grad committee, advisory committee, they were good at keeping me grounded and focused. And they were good for that. And it is nice to have people outside of that little bubble. So yeah, connect you to the outside world. And also it's good emotional support where, they don't know, yeah, I had a bad thing in the lab with my PI. They may not even know all the words in that sentence, but they know that you're going through trouble and they could be there to support you. And that's just as important as having the intellectual support, lots of benefits. Some drawbacks is that people, somebody could say, well, I had an argument with my dissertation advisor and my mom thinks I'm right. It's like, yeah, that's your mom. She's gonna think you're right. Does your mom have a PhD in geology? No. Well, then maybe your chair has something, that she or he has to say here. There's that. Okay. Really important thing to remember, and this is where I kind of put on my little coaching advisor help hat. Okay. Obviously, grad school, very high stakes. Remember, grad programs evaluate progress across academic milestones. And I said that verbatim because I wanted to really drill it into everybody's head. Grad programs evaluate progress across academic milestones. They do not give you worth. They do not take away your worth or identity. Okay. What do grad programs do? Evaluate progress across academic milestones. They don't make you a better person or a worse person. At all. Okay. Because again, speaking from bitter experience, when we're in grad school, we think, oh, once I finish my dissertation, all my problems are solved. Life is easy. Not quite. Not quite. Some would say that's when problems begin, but I don't want to discourage anybody. Okay. Next section, clear communication and conflict resolution for everybody. So we can pause here for a second because I want to hear. Cool. So a lot of these misunderstandings happen because when you speak, to a lesser extent, when you send an email, but mostly when you speak, you say 4 things at once. Number 1 thing is what you mean to say. And this is the thought in your head. Yeah. Yeah, and we are going to talk about the email issues too. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times emails, and we will talk about this, email communication can be taken the wrong way because people read tone into it where there is none or where you didn't intend it. But first there's like what you mean to say. And like in me, this is always really intelligent, really witty. Then there's what actually comes out of your mouth. And I know in my case, usually it's about 15% less smart than what I thought. And if anybody's a fan of Soundgarden, there's a great song, The Day I Try to Live, and there's just this line, the words you say never seem to live up to the ones inside your head. That's what that is. So like what actually comes out of your mouth doesn't live up to what's inside your head, what you thought you would say. All right, then it's a weird thing. I don't know if it's a desert air down here in the Mojave Desert, but like something happens when the words are going through the air. They somehow change, like alchemy, and when it reaches somebody else's ears, they hear something different from what you said. Here's something totally different. Okay. Then they think about it, and then they will tell other people, oh, well, this is what they said. Can you believe what they said to me? So it's 4 steps removed from what you actually meant to say at that point. And I kind of have a really funny example of this that's really happened, but not with anybody on this meeting, so I can use it. But one time, new supervisor came in and they were talking to their team and they said, hey, look, I want to let you know, you can trust me. I would never stab you in the back, and you can trust me. One of the people complained and said, oh, I met with a new supervisor and they said that they were going to stab me in the face. And my talk was like when we were doing the debrief after, it's like, well, maybe next time we do the intro, nobody gets stabbed anywhere by anybody, and we avoid this misunderstanding. But that's a classic kind of what was meant to say was, I have your back, I'm loyal. What came out of the mouth was, I would never stab you in the back. What they heard was, I'm gonna stab you in the face. Beware. Okay. Also, there's a lot of other things. There are a lot of nonverbals. And yeah, some people say this is 93% of speech. I've seen that disputed. It said when there's a misunderstanding, 93% of it is this. But basically, a lot of it's body language. I would ask you, like, what can you tell by my body language and tone of voice? Do I want to be giving this presentation? Am I enjoying it? I am. So you should be reading that, as opposed to if like I absolutely have to do it, I'd be very different and not as animated, not as excited. And only 7% is really the words you say. And it's not, again, that's not universal, but nonverbals are important. They can include things like expression, tone, posture, gestures, spacing, touch. Also, because I'm on a little box, I may be even amping it up a little bit, where I usually, when I'm presenting to people, I tend to be pretty demonstrative. Maybe it's a cultural thing, I don't know. I talk with my hands a lot. I feel like I'm amping it up even more because I'm trying to break through the screen to you and communicate this, and I'm not just sitting here reading from a screen. Yeah. Yeah. And it can be, you can perceive this as conscious or unconscious, but if somebody, for example, if somebody is, some cultures may not do that. And generally speaking, like when I'm looking at body language from somebody to see how agitated they are, if I'm going to back up a little bit, when somebody's here, that's good. When somebody starts doing body language outside of the plane of their body, usually that's a key that they may be upset about something. And that's when you're like, It's kind of funny. I used to do casino surveillance, so I kind of picked up on things like that and just like, okay, yeah, they're just animated with their friends versus they're having an actual disagreement. Yeah, they're happy because they won a jackpot. They're mad because they got told they couldn't have any more beer. Picking up that email. Okay. Yes. And there also are issues with the nonverbals, with neurodivergence, and with cultural considerations. So this is very important, which is why it's important to have this holistic view of everything and realizing, okay, yeah, I feel like this for example, I once had an interaction with a student online like this, where we were meeting and the student was not making eye contact. And part of me is thinking, they're not making eye contact. Maybe they're not paying attention. But we had a really good conversation. And I realized this is just their style. They're not comfortable like staring into the depths of the soul of the camera like that. I don't know how that came across. It's might be kind of creepy if I just sit here like this, like I'm looking into your soul. Probably uncomfortable, and we probably broke away from that. It can be very uncomfortable. But yeah, like once you realize that, the key turns. So back to email. It's very difficult to read tone in text in any way. It's very difficult. Are they, so like, for example, and the big thing I hear from grad students is they wrote, Homer's Odyssey. They wrote an epic, emailed their advisor and got back an email that said, sounds great. Has anyone had that happen? You're like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sounds great. That's good. Yeah. And like for me as an instructor, and again, I will tell people in my classes, like, hey, when I get feedback, if I'm just like 10 out of 10, great. I have nothing bad to say. When I'm giving you more feedback, I'm going to have something that's going to be more corrective. And because I have a lot of papers to grade and you want them back quickly. And if you want to make an office hours appointment, I'll tell you how awesome you are. I'll spend an hour telling you how awesome you are. But yeah, for the purpose of the written feedback, it might be a little bit telegraphic. Are they rushed or are they just being flippant? Like, yeah, whatever. And it's really funny. I hear this too, where people read things like that totally differently. Where, oh, the chair said, I don't care about that. Student took it to mean like they don't care about me. Chair meant I am not going to be mad if you don't do it. Totally different meaning, but that's just how it was read. Are they sincere or are they sarcastic? Always easy to kind of look for anger in emails, especially when there's a power differential, especially when you have a lot on the line, you can find that. And the best rule when we're emailing or texting is slow down, wait to send. And just remember that is forever. People will bring that up. And I think I have also CC people thoughtfully. So don't just CC everybody. If you're having a discussion with your chair, you don't need to CC the grad coordinator or the grad college. That may be resented unless you need to, but just be very thoughtful about it. Okay. I have a little game here. Guess my tone. So, hey, we had a workshop. I emailed somebody afterwards for some reason and said, I just wanted to take it. So it's to who knows who. I wanted to take a moment to drop a line to let you know I really appreciated your comments at today's workshop. Few people have the courage to speak out as you did, and the room was enlightened by your contribution. And I'm being sarcastic there, by your contribution. I'm not surprised, however, because whenever we interact, I know I can rely on you to say something thought-provoking. It's always a pleasure working with you. Best of luck, Dave. Show of hands, whatever we want to do. How many people think how many people can read that sincerely, and how many people could read that sarcastically that I absolutely loathe being in workshops with you, or I love it? What are we thinking?
I took that as sincere.
Yeah, and I wrote it neutrally, where it could be either. And as you can tell, when I put a tone in it, I can, yeah, I mean, like it was a pretty nice thing, but in that second paragraph, if you took out, it was always a pleasure working with you, that's very ambiguous. If I'm like, yeah, they always give me something to think about. It's very funny because a political leader a while back, and I don't want to get into politics, but was quoted in the media saying, all my generals are idiots. All the generals are idiots. They then go to one of the generals for a reaction. The general said, we have robust conversations that force us to kind of explore our deeply held assumptions, our most deeply held assumptions. Like we have robust conversations and we all do this, which is a polite way of saying that somebody might not know what they're talking about, or at least that's a perception. But that is how they phrase it. They're not going to come out and say, yeah, I don't like my boss. They'll say, we do that. So saying you always say thought-provoking things could be read either way. But yeah, I meant it to be positive, but I could see somebody could read this as sarcastic. And oftentimes I have people come to me and show me an email, and at first I won't see it. Then I talk to them for a couple more minutes, and then we kind of go back in. I'm like, okay, now I see it. Kind of like when you jump into the ocean at first, it's all cold. Then you like go out and you come back in, it's not that bad. It's kind of like that. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. And usually, again, making it shorter is better. Like briefer is usually better for this. And just like, hey, thanks so much. You're awesome. Good stuff. Brief is good. Yeah. One thing I would avoid, and I know we're all about using AI tools to enhance productivity, because God forbid we're not as productive as possible, but just my personal opinion, not my ombud's opinion, people using AI tends to get in the way. And I've seen email threads where it's literally two AIs arguing with each other and the humans are just sort of typing things in for them. And it gets kind of, basically your message wants to have an emotional core, and the more you use distance from that, the different it is. Yeah, I know nothing sounds sarcastic, but again, people can read that in there. And people read that stuff and they're like, well, what do you get? I don't get this. Somebody just asked you a question. Well, no, I explained this to them last month. They're telling me they don't think I know what I'm talking about. Like, I don't see it, but I see where you see it now. So yeah, so that's why this is really important. Okay, I'm moving this one on. Closed loop communication. So crucial to, I guess, prevent these things from being problems in the first place. I talk about that in the blog post today. It is a very big thing in aviation and medicine. One thing that aviation and medicine have in common is that misunderstandings can literally kill people, and a lot of people. So for example, like a big thing so one thing I read once, I don't know if this is true, but apparently back in the early days of aviation, there was a checklist on what to do for some procedures. And at one point, the co-pilot says takeoff power, meaning the power you would need to take off. And apparently they were flying, the pilot heard take off power, like take the power off. They cut the power, the plane crashed and they died. And they then revised the manual to say maximum power. So that's why they have closed loop communications. Okay, what does that mean, closed loop communications? Basically, what happens is somebody says to me, take off power. So I say, oh, you want me to take the power off, like remove the power. And they either say yes or no, that's not how to do it. It's kind of cool. I don't know. Because of a lot of the classes I teach are kind of on more offbeat things. YouTube algorithms suggest some funny things. So one of the things that I watched yesterday was a video of a nuclear missile launch from a silo. So that drill. And they were doing this where they were reading it back, and you could see why. Yes, you don't want to misunderstand launching a nuclear missile. So you repeat back, you get confirmation. Well, we can practice later on if we want to. Kind of another thing here, where does conflict happen? A lot of different areas. Interpersonal is within one person, so within their mind. I've gotten and read the ones that the ombuds office works with. Interpersonal is between two people. Group is within a group. Institution is at at UNLV basically, or within your department. Community is at the local level, and society is beyond the community. And the last two, you would want to talk to an activist or a lobbyist to kind of get that. The middle three are things that we do at the ombuds office. And there's three kinds of interpersonal here. There's basically peer conflicts at the same level, which you might have with another student. You then have subordinate conflicts where the power and balance favors you. So let's say that you're a grad assistant or a lab manager, and there's undergraduates. They are really intimidated by you. And then there's also the superior where the power balance and favors them, as in with a member of the faculty or a chair. Okay. Conflict generally is 5 drivers: history of relationships, past negative experiences, values, disagreements about key concepts, why are we doing this? Externals, things not related to it. So, hey, the price of eggs went up and now I can't have my favorite omelet, my 5-egg omelet. My cholesterol might thank me, but yeah, no more 5-egg omelet. I'm stressed out. Data, we know different things or we don't agree in the interpretation. So like, for example, I believe that I was going to have a committee for my exam track and I don't, or vice versa. That would be a data conflict. Last one is structure. We don't know who's in charge. Like, okay, who on my committee is going to give me feedback in this? Is it the chair? Is it the outside member, the GC rep? Who is it? If they don't agree, conflict. Oh, I like that. The rules of aviation are written in blood. That is really cool. I mean, it's valuable, but it sounds cool and it's true. Same thing with medicine. That's that. We also have interests, which are what we want and need, our underlying interests. How does that differ from the position? Well, position is your stated goal in bargaining. Like, for example, I want to defend my thesis on this date is a position. Okay, let's say your member of your committee isn't here. They now have to tell you no. An interest is what you would like, what underlies a position. Like, I would like to defend my thesis promptly, soon. That's an interest. Now you can negotiate. And basically you have room to be flexible, to think creatively, as opposed to we must do it. It's your wants, needs, hopes, and fears. All right. Generally speaking, to resolve conflicts, you don't want to get bogged down in values arguments because they're very difficult to win, if at all, or arguing over your past relationship or worrying about the price of eggs and the externals. Try to shift to your interests, your data, and your structure. And I think in most cases for grad school, your interests and your committee's interests should be aligned in that their interest and your interests are to get you through the program. So you should be aligned. If not, then it's time to talk about reconstituting the committee or asking those questions. 5 tips really quickly, and then I want to have a robust question and answer for about 10 minutes or so. To de-escalate most conflicts, number one, hit pause. Like, hey, I'm kind of having a tough time here. Before I respond, I'm gonna wait. Two, what is my goal? Is my goal to defend my thesis, to get my dissertation, to get a letter of recommendation from these folks? What's my goal? Think about that. Three, communicate, talk to each other. Most important, listen. A lot of communications issues are because people aren't listening. So listen, be heard. Four, especially for in grad school, you have a bunch of partners in this. They should not be your adversary. You know, they should be your partners trying to solve this bigger problem of how to get you through the program. And last, reach out and talk to somebody like we talked about before, people in the program, people not in the program. And now, sometimes though, I will say before I get to other people to talk to, you may want to escalate if these aren't appropriate. For example, if there's allegations of bias related to sexual harassment or misconduct, that would be an escalation. I wouldn't say, yeah, you want to mediate that. Criminal behavior, threats or the possibility of serious harm, complete disregard for UNLV policies and things like that. You know, that would be formal channels as in the grad college, or if it's a dire threat to life, emergency services, the Rebel Safe app to get some help. Okay, just talk about another external resource, the Ombuds Office. What Bree and I do is we are available to help in several ways in grad school and elsewhere, everywhere at UNLV. Number one, we can be a confidential sounding board. You know, Bree and I are not going to be in your program, but we both have experience in grad school and one of us in professional school. So we can be there to be your confidential sounding board. And again, it is in our ethics, which I have right here. Next to me, it's in my code of ethics. Confidentiality is one of the big four. So we don't tell anybody. Two, we have coaching for people approaching conflict and communication. So like, hey, and it could be everything from just like, hey, I want to send my chair an email because I'm disappointed because this didn't happen. What do you think? You know, and it's not like we're going to tell you, yes, you must do it this way. It's like, okay, here's how I'm reading it, and here's how they might react. Stuff like that, you know, and that's it. We're just a sounding board. We also have group coaching, group training on conflict resolution, not avoidance. We have a mediation practice, so if two people don't get along, they can choose to mediate. I like to close each discussion, each thing, and we can kind of think about this, and then we can stop sharing. Kind of one thing you learned, one thing factual, one thing intellectual, one thing more emotional, more personal you realized, and last, one thing that we will do differently. And if we could stop sharing now, I'd love to have questions, comments, all that fun stuff. Thank you for everything, just for arranging this, and thank you to all of you for being great. You know, I love doing this. I love connecting with people, so I'm really happy about it. So thank you, and have a great day and good luck. And our door is open, so any questions, please reach out.